Everyone ignored the billionaire's 6-year-old one-legged twins at school until a poor 7-year-old girl showed up and changed everything with just 2 words. Before we reveal this story, leave a like and comment where you're watching from and one dream you still believe in. The screech of tires shattered the morning calm at Riverside Elementary as Marcus Wellington's black Bentley pulled up to the curb. Inside the luxurious vehicle, 6-year-old twins Oliver and Ethan pressed their faces against the tinted windows, watching their classmates sprint across the playground on legs they'd never have. "Daddy, do we have to go in?" Oliver whispered, his prosthetic leg feeling heavier than usual beneath his navy uniform pants. Marcus Wellington, worth $12 billion and owner of Wellington Industries, turned to face his sons. His weathered face, marked by years of business battles, softened as he looked at the boys who'd lost their legs in the same car accident that took their mother 3 years ago. "You're Wellingtons," he said firmly, straightening Ethan's collar. "We don't run from anything." "May do," but as the twins hobbled toward the school entrance, their prosthetic legs clicking against the pavement, Marcus felt his heart break, watching other children point and whisper. Oliver stumbled, catching himself against his brother, and the cruel laughter that followed made Marcus's hands clench into fists. The twins had been at Riverside for 2 months, and every day was torture. During recess, they sat alone on the bench while other kids played soccer and tag. In PE class, they were always picked last, if at all. Their teacher, Mrs. Henderson, tried to include them, but the damage was done. They were the crippled rich kids nobody wanted around. "Look, it's the robot boys," sneered Jake Morrison, an 8-year-old bully whose father worked construction. "Beep, beep, beep." He mimicked their walking sounds, causing a group of kids to burst into giggles. Oliver's face flushed red, but Ethan just stared ahead, building walls around his heart like his father taught him in business. The twins had learned that showing emotion only made things worse. At lunch, they sat at their usual empty table, picking at gourmet meals their private chef had prepared, while other kids enjoyed simple sandwiches and laughed with friends. The isolation was suffocating, but it was all they knew. That afternoon, as they waited for their driver, Oliver noticed something that would change everything. A small girl was sitting alone by the school's oak tree, her clothes worn but clean, her dark hair in simple braids. She wasn't looking at them with pity or disgust. She was watching with curious, intelligent eyes. "Who is she?" Ethan asked quietly. Before Oliver could answer, the girl stood up and began walking toward them. Every step was deliberate, confident, as if she held secrets the world wasn't ready to hear. "Tomorrow," she said simply as she passed by, "everything changes." 7-year-old Emma Rodriguez had been watching the Wellington twins for exactly 3 days, 17 hours, and 42 minutes. Not because she felt sorry for them, but because she recognized something others couldn't see, the way their eyes tracked sound, how their heads tilted when music played from the nearby music room, and most importantly, how their fingers unconsciously tapped complex rhythms against their wheelchair armrests during assemblies. Emma lived in a tiny apartment above Rodriguez Auto Repair with her widowed father, Carlos. While other kids played video games, she spent her evenings reading advanced mathematics books she'd borrowed from the public library, teaching herself calculus and physics. Her father worked 16-hour days just to keep food on their table and Emma in school, never knowing his daughter had an IQ that would make scientists weep. That morning, Emma had made a decision that would alter the trajectory of 3 young lives forever. "Oliver, Ethan," she called out during recess, approaching their usual bench with the determination of a general planning battle strategy. The twins looked up, surprised. In 2 months, no child had voluntarily spoken their names. "I'm Emma Rodriguez," she continued, settling beside them uninvited. "And I need to tell you something important. Oh, if you're going to make fun of us too, just get it over with," Oliver muttered, his voice carrying the exhaustion of someone far too young to sound so defeated. Emma tilted her head, studying them both with those penetrating dark eyes. "Why would I make fun of you when you have something everyone here would kill for?" Ethan frowned. "What are you talking about? You can hear it, can't you?" Emma leaned forward conspiratorially. "The music, not just hearing it, understanding it, feeling it in ways others can't." The twins exchanged glances. How could she know about the melodies that filled their heads, the complex harmonies they heard in everyday sounds that seemed to escape everyone else? "I don't know what you mean," Oliver lied, but his voice wavered. Emma smiled knowingly. "Yesterday during assembly, when Principal Myers was talking about the school budget, you were both conducting an invisible orchestra. Your left hands moved in 4/4 time, while your right hands created counter-melodies. That's not normal 6-year-old behavior." The twins stared at her, speechless. Emma continued, "My father says I'm too smart for my own good. He doesn't know I've been accepted to MIT's youth program. I haven't told him because we can't afford it. But you two, you have something even rarer than intelligence." "What's that supposed to mean?" Ethan whispered. Emma stood up, brushing dust from her faded jeans. "It means tomorrow I'm going to prove to everyone that being different isn't a weakness. It's a superpower. But first, I need to ask you both something very important." The twins leaned forward, hanging on her every word. "Do you trust me?" That evening at Wellington Manor, Oliver and Ethan sat in their father's study, a room larger than most people's entire homes. Marcus was reviewing quarterly reports when Oliver finally found the courage to speak. "Dad, what happened to Mom's piano?" Marcus's pen froze above the documents. Sarah Wellington's grand piano had been the heart of their home, where she'd played every evening while pregnant with the twins, filling them with music before they'd even taken their first breath. "It's in storage," Marcus replied carefully. "Why do you ask?" "We remember her playing," Ethan said softly. "Not just the sound, but feeling the music move through us." Marcus set down his pen, really looking at his sons for the first time in months. Since Sarah's death and the twins' accident, he'd thrown himself into work, using business deals and corporate acquisitions to numb the pain of watching his children struggle with disabilities he couldn't fix with all his billions. "Your mother used to say you two were her greatest composition," Marcus whispered, memories flooding back. "Even in the womb, you'd move to different rhythms. She swore you were conducting symphonies before you could walk." "Dad," Oliver said quietly, "there's this girl at school, Emma. She says we have something special." Marcus's business instincts immediately activated. "What kind of special?" "Son, people will say anything to get close to our family's wealth." "She's not like that," Ethan insisted. "She's different. Smart, really smart. And poor, Dad. Her clothes are old, but she doesn't seem to care. She sees something in us that we don't even understand ourselves." That night, Marcus made a phone call that would change everything. Within an hour, his private investigator had Emma Rodriguez's complete background. Daughter of Carlos Rodriguez, straight-A student, despite attending an underfunded school, library records showing she'd checked out graduate-level textbooks, and teachers who described her as possibly gifted beyond measurement. But it was the final detail that made Marcus's blood run cold. Emma's mother, Dr. Isabella Rodriguez, had been a renowned neuromusicologist who died in a research accident when Emma was 4. Isabella's final published paper was titled "Neurological Foundations of Musical Genius in Trauma Survivors." The next morning, as Marcus watched his sons hobble toward school, he made a decision that would either save his family or destroy the fragile peace they'd built. He was going to find out exactly what Emma Rodriguez knew about his boys, and why a 7-year-old genius was interested in 2 disabled children everyone else ignored. But first, he had a piano to retrieve from storage. "Get me Sarah's Steinway," he told his assistant. "Have it tuned and placed in the boys' playroom by tonight. Sir, are you sure? The boys haven't shown any interest in music since we stopped giving them the chance, Marcus interrupted, his voice heavy with regret. Emma Rodriguez stood before the Steinway grand piano that had materialized overnight in the Wellington twins' playroom, her small fingers hovering above the keys like a surgeon preparing for a delicate operation. The instrument was worth more than her father would earn in 20 years, but that wasn't what made her hands tremble. "Your mother played this," Emma said softly, her voice carrying a wisdom that seemed impossible for someone who hadn't yet lost her first tooth. Oliver and Ethan sat nearby in their wheelchairs, having been dismissed from school early when Emma convinced the nurse they both had mysterious stomach aches that required immediate attention. Marcus Wellington watched from the doorway, his business meeting forgotten when his private investigator had called with an urgent update about Emma's background. "How did you know about Mom?" Ethan whispered. Emma's fingers found middle C, and the note resonated through the room like a prayer. "My mother studied something called inherited musical memory. She believed that trauma could unlock musical abilities in children, especially if they were exposed to complex musical patterns before birth." She turned to face the twins, her dark eyes serious beyond her years. "Your mother played for you every day when you were in her womb, didn't she? Classical music, jazz, complex compositions that most children never hear." Marcus stepped into the room, his voice thick with emotion. "How could you possibly know that?" "Because," Emma said, moving to stand between the twins' wheelchairs, "my mother's research was specifically about families like yours. She studied children who'd experienced trauma but showed extraordinary musical abilities afterward. She called it compensatory genius." Oliver's breathing grew rapid. "What does that mean?" Emma placed one hand on Oliver's shoulder and another on Ethan's. "It means that when you lost your legs, your brains rewired themselves to process music in ways that would make professional composers jealous. The neural pathways that controlled your lower limbs didn't disappear. They transformed into something incredible." "That's impossible," Marcus said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Is it?" Emma challenged. She returned to the piano and began playing a complex Bach invention, her small fingers dancing across the keys with technical proficiency that shouldn't exist in a 7-year-old. "I've been studying music theory since I was 4, trying to understand what my mother discovered before she died, but I can't do what they can do." She stopped playing abruptly and looked directly at the twins. "Show him. Show your father what you hear when I play." "We can't play piano," Oliver protested. "We don't know how." Emma smiled mysteriously. "You don't need to know how. You just need to trust what you feel." She began playing again, a hauntingly beautiful melody that seemed to emerge from somewhere beyond technique or training. As the music filled the room, something extraordinary happened. The twins began to move, their hands conducting invisible orchestras, their heads swaying to rhythms that seemed to exist in dimensions only they could perceive. Marcus watched in stunned silence as his sons began to hum harmonies that perfectly complemented Emma's playing, harmonies so complex and beautiful that tears began streaming down his face. "My God," he whispered. "Sarah, can you see this?" But Emma wasn't finished. She had one more secret to reveal. The revelation came at 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday that would forever divide the Wellington family's life into before and after. Emma had spent the past hour working with the twins at their mother's piano, coaxing melodies from their souls that defied everything Marcus thought he knew about his sons. "Dad?" Oliver called out as his fingers found the piano keys for the first time, producing a chord so perfect it seemed to have been composed by angels. "We can see the music, like colors and shapes moving through the air." Emma nodded knowingly. "Chromesthesia. It's a form of synesthesia where sound creates visual experiences. But yours is different. It's enhanced by the neural rewiring that happened after your accident." Marcus sank into a leather chair, overwhelmed by watching his 6-year-old sons create music that professional composers would spend decades trying to achieve. "Emma, how do you know all this?" And the 7-year-old genius stood beside the piano, her expression growing solemn. "Because my mother didn't die in an accident. She was murdered." The room fell silent except for the lingering resonance of the piano strings. Marcus felt his blood turn to ice as Emma continued with the matter-of-fact tone that only children could maintain when discussing tragedy. "My mother discovered something that certain people didn't want her to publish. She found that musical genius triggered by trauma wasn't random. It could be predicted, and more importantly, it could be artificially induced." "What are you saying?" Marcus's voice was barely above a whisper. Emma walked to the window, looking out at the perfectly manicured Wellington estate. "My mother's research was funded by a pharmaceutical company called Nexus Dynamics. They wanted to create a drug that could give people instant musical abilities. But Mom discovered that the only real trigger was significant neurological trauma combined with prenatal musical exposure." Oliver's hands stilled on the piano keys. "You mean, your accident wasn't an accident," Emma said quietly, turning back to face the family she was about to shatter and save simultaneously. "Someone wanted to see if my mother's theories were correct. They needed test subjects, wealthy ones whose progress could be monitored without suspicion." Marcus shot to his feet, his billionaire's instincts screaming danger. "That's impossible! I investigated that accident myself. Mechanical failure. The brakes were sabotaged by someone with access to Wellington Industries' private garage," Emma interrupted. "Someone who knew exactly when your wife would be driving with the boys to their music lesson that day." The twins looked back and forth between Emma and their father, unable to comprehend the magnitude of what they were hearing. "How could you possibly know any of this?" Marcus demanded. Emma reached into her backpack and pulled out a worn notebook filled with her mother's handwriting. "Because before she died, my mother hid her real research with me. She made me memorize everything, told me that someday I'd need to find the children who'd been hurt because of her work. She made me promise to protect them." She opened the notebook to a page that made Marcus's knees buckle. There, in Dr. Isabella Rodriguez's careful handwriting, were the names Oliver Wellington and Ethan Wellington, along with their birth dates, their mother's musical background, and a detailed prediction of their potential post-trauma musical abilities. "The people who killed my mother are still out there," Emma said softly, "and now they know the experiment worked." The weight of Emma's revelation settled over Wellington Manor like a suffocating blanket. Marcus paced the length of his study while his private security team conducted emergency sweeps of the property. Emma sat cross-legged on the Persian rug, her mother's research notebook open before her like a battle plan. "There are others," she said quietly, her finger tracing names written in her mother's distinctive handwriting. 12 families targeted across the country. Children with musical backgrounds who experienced accidents that resulted in specific types of trauma. Oliver and Ethan remained at their mother's piano, their newfound musical abilities creating a soundtrack of haunting melodies that seemed to express emotions too complex for their 6-year-old hearts to fully understand. "How many are still alive?" Marcus asked, his business mind already calculating risks and strategies. Emma's face clouded. "According to my research, only 6 children survived their accidents. You boys and 4 others scattered across different states. But here's what's really terrifying. All the surviving children have shown extraordinary abilities in their respective fields." She flipped through pages filled with diagrams and medical terminology. "There's a girl in Oregon whose spinal injury triggered photographic memory and mathematical genius. Twin boys in Texas whose brain injuries resulted in telepathic communication abilities. A boy in Florida whose lost hearing enhanced his ability to predict weather patterns with impossible accuracy." Marcus stopped pacing. "You're describing superhumans. I'm describing children whose brains rewired themselves after trauma, unlocking potential that most humans never access," Emma corrected. "My mother called it compensatory evolution, the brain's ability to transform devastating loss into extraordinary gain." The sound of Ethan playing a composition that seemed to channel pure emotion filled the room. His brother Oliver joined in, their four hands creating music so beautiful that Marcus had to grip the back of his chair to keep from collapsing. "But if these people are still out there," Marcus said slowly, "if they know the experiment worked, they'll want to study the results," Emma finished grimly. "They'll want to understand exactly how the transformations occurred, and then they'll want to create more subjects." A chill ran down Marcus's spine as he realized the implications. "They'll target other children," Emma nodded solemnly, "unless we stop them first." The 7-year-old genius closed her mother's notebook and stood up, her small frame radiating determination that would make generals proud. "I've been preparing for this moment for 3 years. I know who they are, where they operate, and most importantly, I know their weakness." "What weakness?" Marcus asked. Emma smiled, and for a moment she looked exactly like the child she was supposed to be. "They don't know that I exist. My mother hid me so well that I'm completely off their radar. To them, I'm just a poor girl whose mother died in an unfortunate accident." She walked over to the twins, who were now playing a duet that seemed to make the very air shimmer with beauty. "But I'm not just any poor girl," Emma continued. "I'm a girl with an IQ over 200, 3 years of intensive research, and access to the most powerful family in the state." She looked directly at Marcus, her eyes blazing with purpose. "Mr. Wellington, how would you like to declare war on the people who murdered your wife and maimed your children?" The sound of the twins' music swelled to a crescendo, as if the universe itself was waiting for Marcus Wellington's answer. Outside, storm clouds gathered, and somewhere in the distance, predators were closing in on prey that had just learned how to fight back. The battle for justice was about to begin, but first, they had to survive what was coming next. The attack came at dawn, just as Emma had predicted, with her terrifying 7-year-old precision. Marcus Wellington's military-grade security system erupted in a symphony of warnings as 3 black SUVs breached the estate's perimeter defenses. Through the bulletproof windows of the twins' bedroom, Emma watched tactical teams emerge from the vehicles with the cold efficiency of surgeons, preparing for a delicate operation. "They're here," she whispered, her small fingers dancing across a modified tablet that displayed real-time electromagnetic readings from around the property. Oliver and Ethan sat at their mother's restored Steinway grand piano, their prosthetic legs positioned carefully on custom pedals their father had installed overnight. What had begun as nervous fidgeting with the keys had evolved into something that defied scientific explanation. Their music was literally bending electromagnetic waves, creating interference patterns that made electronic equipment malfunction within a 100-yard radius. "Keep playing," Emma commanded with the authority of a general commanding troops, though she looked like nothing more than a small girl in yesterday's clothes. "Your harmonic frequencies are disrupting their communication arrays. Every note you play makes their coordination more difficult." Marcus burst through the reinforced door, his usually perfect businessman's composure shattered by the sight of armed figures setting up sophisticated equipment on his manicured lawn. His phone was pressed to his ear, but the conversation wasn't going well. "FBI is still 18 minutes out," he reported grimly. "My private security team. Half of them aren't responding to calls. These people got to them first." Through the windows, they could see the tactical teams deploying equipment that looked more like scientific instruments than weapons. Parabolic dishes, electromagnetic field generators, and what appeared to be some kind of neural scanning device, all pointed toward the mansion like the fingers of a mechanical god. "Mr. Wellington," Emma said with the calm of someone who'd spent 3 years preparing for this exact moment, "I need you to trust me completely. What I'm about to ask your sons to do has never been attempted by enhanced children. It will either save all of us, or it will kill Oliver and Ethan in the process." Marcus felt his blood turn to ice. These weren't ordinary kidnappers, or even corporate rivals. These were the same people who'd murdered his wife and orchestrated the accident that had cost his sons their legs. They'd come to finish what they'd started, and they had the resources of a shadow government organization behind them. "What do you need them to do?" Marcus asked, his paternal instincts warring with the desperate need to protect his children from further harm. Emma's expression grew deadly serious as she pulled up complex waveform patterns on her tablet. "Oliver, Ethan, can you feel the electromagnetic signatures from their equipment? The way their machines are humming with specific frequencies?" The 6-year-old twins nodded in unison, their enhanced musical perception extending far beyond normal human hearing. They could literally feel the electronic devices outside like discordant notes in an otherwise harmonious symphony. "Then I need you to find those exact frequencies and reverse them," Emma said, her voice carrying the weight of 3 years' worth of studying her mother's research. "Create counter-harmonics that will cancel out their equipment entirely. What happened next would be analyzed by physicists for generations to come." The twins' hands moved across the piano keys with supernatural precision, their enhanced neural pathways calculating complex acoustic mathematics that would challenge university professors. The music they created began to exist in dimensions beyond mere sound, generating standing waves that interfered with every piece of electronic equipment on the property. Suddenly, the tactical team's radios went silent. Their night vision goggles flickered and died. Vehicle engines sputtered to a stop as their computer systems crashed. Even their weapons' electronic sighting systems failed, leaving highly trained operatives stumbling around like children in the dark. "Impossible," Marcus breathed, watching through the bulletproof windows as a $1 million assault operation crumbled because 2 6-year-old boys were playing piano. Emma allowed herself a grim smile. "My mother theorized that severe neurological trauma, combined with prenatal musical exposure, could eventually allow manipulation of electromagnetic fields. She just never lived long enough to see her hypothesis proven correct." But their victory celebration was premature. Through the chaos of disabled equipment and confused operatives, Emma spotted a figure walking calmly across the lawn with the confidence of someone whose technology couldn't be affected by the twins' abilities. Dr. Helena Voss strode through the electromagnetic dead zone completely unprotected, her silver hair gleaming in the morning sunlight as she carried a device that pulsed with ominous red energy. Unlike her subordinates, she showed no signs of confusion or equipment failure. "She's completely shielded," Emma realized with growing horror, her tablet readings confirming her worst fears. "And that device she's carrying—" "What is it?" Marcus demanded, his billionaire's instinct for recognizing dangerous technology screaming warnings. Emma's face went pale as bone as she recognized the device from her mother's hidden research files. "It's a neural enhancement amplifier. She's not here to capture or study the boys, Mr. Wellington. She's here to force their abilities to evolve beyond safe limits. And if she succeeds in activating that device—" "What happens?" Marcus whispered, though he already dreaded the answer. Emma's voice was barely audible as she delivered the death sentence. "The enhancement process will burn out their nervous systems completely. They'll develop abilities that could reshape reality itself, but the neural strain will kill them within minutes." Through the windows, "Doctor." Helena Voss smiled directly at them, raised her pulsing device, and began walking toward the mansion's front door with the patience of a predator who knew her prey had nowhere left to run. The war for the twins' lives had just escalated beyond anything they'd prepared for, and Emma Rodriguez was about to discover that being a 7-year-old genius meant nothing when facing someone who'd spent decades perfecting the art of turning children into weapons. Helena Voss stood in the Wellington Estate's grand marble foyer like a queen surveying her conquered territory. The neural enhancement device in her hands pulsed with malevolent energy, its red glow reflecting off crystal chandeliers that had witnessed 3 generations of Wellington family celebrations. "Marcus Wellington!" she called out, her voice echoing through the mansion's corridors with the confidence of someone who'd orchestrated dozens of similar operations. "Bring me the children, and I promise their transformation will be educational." From their barricaded position in the music room 3 floors above, Emma worked frantically on her modified tablet while the twins continued their supernatural performance. Their music had evolved beyond conscious control. Oliver and Ethan were now channeling frequencies that made the entire mansion vibrate with protective energy. But Emma could see their vital signs approaching dangerous levels. "She's climbing the main staircase," Marcus reported, his multi-million-dollar security cameras somehow still functioning despite the electromagnetic chaos. "Emma, whatever you're planning, we're running out of time." Emma's fingers flew across her tablet screen, accessing quantum-encrypted files her mother had hidden in digital locations that wouldn't be discovered for another decade. "I found it," she whispered, with the triumph of someone who'd just located the Holy Grail. "Mom's fail-safe protocol." She turned to face the twins, her 7-year-old features hardened by 3 years of preparation for this exact moment. The weight of protecting not just Oliver and Ethan, but potentially dozens of other enhanced children around the world, pressed down on her small shoulders like the gravity of planets. "Oliver, Ethan," she said with the calm authority of a surgeon about to attempt an impossible operation, "I need you to do something that's never been attempted before in the history of human consciousness." "What?" Oliver asked, his hands never stopping their complex dance across the piano keys, even as sweat beaded on his forehead from the enormous strain of maintaining their electromagnetic defenses. Emma pulled up a waveform pattern so complex it looked like abstract art created by alien mathematics. "You're going to play the exact neural frequency that reverses traumatic enhancement. My mother discovered that the same neurological trauma that unlocks supernatural abilities can be redirected." Ethan's eyes widened as he processed the implications, his enhanced musical perception allowing him to understand the devastating beauty of what Emma was proposing. "You mean we're going to give Dr. Voss the same thing she did to us?" Emma's expression grew cold with the focused rage of a daughter who'd spent 3 years studying how to destroy the woman who'd murdered her mother. Not the same thing, something infinitely worse. "You're going to force her to experience every moment of trauma she's inflicted on innocent children, all at once, amplified through her own technology." The sound of Dr. Voss's footsteps grew closer, accompanied by the increasingly ominous whine of her neural enhancement device charging to full operational power. "Emma," Marcus said urgently, his paternal instincts screaming as he watched his sons push their abilities beyond any safe threshold. "Whatever you're planning, execute it now. I can hear her outside the door." Emma positioned herself between the piano and the reinforced entrance, her mother's research notebook clutched to her chest like a shield forged from love and scientific brilliance. When she enters this room, she'll attempt to activate her device on Oliver and Ethan. But the neural frequency you create will turn her own enhancement technology against her nervous system. "Will it kill her?" Oliver asked, his inherent kindness shining through despite everything they'd endured at the hands of people like Dr. Voss. Emma's expression grew colder than winter storms. It will do to her exactly what she's done to dozens of innocent children over the past decade. She'll experience rapid neural enhancement without preparation, without safeguards, and without the loving support that helped you survive your transformation. The reinforced door exploded inward as Dr. Voss arrived, her neural device fully charged and aimed directly at the twins with the precision of a weapon designed specifically to target developing minds. "Time to complete the experiment, children," Dr. Voss announced with the clinical detachment of someone who'd convinced herself that torturing children was somehow noble. "Your enhanced abilities are impressive, but you're about to discover what true evolution looks like." But as her device powered up to unleash forced neural enhancement, something impossible began to happen. The twins' music shifted into a frequency pattern that made the very fabric of reality seem to ripple like water, disturbed by thrown stones. The electromagnetic waves emanating from their piano began interacting with Dr. Voss's technology in ways that violated every law of physics she understood. "What have you done?" Dr. Voss screamed as her own neural enhancement device turned against her, flooding her nervous system with the same traumatic restructuring she'd inflicted on countless children over her career. Emma smiled with cold satisfaction that would have terrified demons. "I gave you exactly what you've given them, Dr. Voss. The opportunity to become something extraordinary. The only difference is that you won't have loving families to help you through the transformation." But as Dr. Voss collapsed, convulsing as her own technology rewrote her neural pathways, Emma realized their victory had come with a terrible price. The energy required for their defense had pushed Oliver and Ethan far beyond safe operational limits. Oliver's eyes were rolling back in his head, his nervous system overloading from the strain of manipulating electromagnetic fields, while his 6-year-old brain tried to process abilities that shouldn't exist in human consciousness. The twins had saved themselves, but Emma wasn't sure they would survive their own rescue. The silence that followed Dr. Voss's collapse was more terrifying than any sound Emma Rodriguez had ever heard in her 7 years of life. Oliver Wellington slumped unconscious over his mother's piano keys, his small body trembling as medical alarms throughout the mansion shrieked warnings about critical neural activity. "Oliver!" Ethan cried out, his own enhanced musical abilities wavering dangerously as terror overwhelmed supernatural talent. The electromagnetic field protecting the estate flickered like a candle in hurricane winds. Emma's modified tablet displayed readings that made her genius-level intellect calculate survival probabilities no child should ever have to contemplate. Oliver's neural pathways were experiencing cascade failure, his 6-year-old brain shutting down non-essential functions to prevent complete system collapse from the strain of channeling frequencies that could bend reality itself. Marcus Wellington knelt beside his unconscious son, his billions of dollars utterly meaningless against the fragility of a child's overtaxed nervous system. "Emma, what's happening to him? Tell me how to fix this." "Neural cascade failure," Emma said quietly, her clinical assessment delivered through tears that streamed down her face like rivers of helplessness. His enhanced abilities pushed his brain beyond human limits. His consciousness is retreating to prevent permanent damage, but she couldn't finish the sentence. The tablet's readings suggested that Oliver's mind might never return from the protective shutdown his neural pathways had triggered. Dr. Voss stirred on the marble floor, her own forced enhancement having transformed her into something that was no longer entirely human. Her eyes now held the same otherworldly intelligence that marked all trauma-enhanced children, but twisted by decades of causing pain and viewing children as experimental subjects. "You don't understand what you've accomplished," Dr. Voss whispered, her voice carrying harmonics that made the air around her shimmer with visible energy. "The neural enhancement process creates permanent connections between enhanced individuals. We are all linked now, every child I've ever modified. Emma's blood turned to ice as she processed the implications. What are you saying? Doctor. Voss struggled to her feet, her movements displaying the same supernatural coordination that characterized the twins' musical abilities. I'm saying that Oliver's neural crisis is being felt by every enhanced child across the entire country. The trauma network I accidentally created is trying to save him. As if summoned by her words, Ethan suddenly straightened at the piano, his eyes wide with wonder that transcended his 6 years of life. Emma, I can hear them. All of them. The other children you told us about. They're singing to Oliver. No. Through some impossible quantum connection that defied every law of science, Emma understood the scattered, enhanced children across America were combining their extraordinary abilities to save Oliver Wellington. The mathematical genius in Oregon was calculating precise neural repair frequencies. The telepathic twins in Texas were creating mental bridges to guide Oliver's consciousness back to wakefulness. The weather-sensitive boy in Florida was somehow channeling atmospheric pressure changes to stabilize Oliver's brain chemistry. It's working, Emma breathed, watching her tablet display Oliver's vital signs beginning to stabilize as children he'd never met poured their abilities into healing him. But as Oliver's eyes fluttered open, Dr. Voss delivered a revelation that would shatter everything Emma thought she knew about her own identity and her mother's death. There's something else you need to understand, little genius, Dr. Voss said, her enhanced consciousness now capable of perceiving neural patterns across vast distances. Your mother wasn't killed because of her research into musical enhancement. She was murdered because she was the first successful adult enhancement subject. Emma's world tilted on its axis as 3 years of carefully constructed beliefs crumbled around her. That's impossible. Mom was a researcher, not a test subject. Isabella Rodriguez wasn't killed for studying enhanced children, Dr. Voss continued, her transformation allowing her to read quantum-level neural connections. She was eliminated because she'd successfully enhanced herself and was using her abilities to protect enhanced children from people like me. She could have stopped our entire operation, but she chose to hide her transformation and focus on safeguarding her daughter. Emma stared at Dr. Voss, feeling puzzle pieces of her life rearranging themselves into a picture she'd never imagined possible. You have your mother's enhanced abilities, Emma Rodriguez. You always have. The only question is whether you're ready to accept what you really are. As if responding to Dr. Voss's words, Emma felt something awakening deep within her consciousness, abilities that had been dormant, waiting for the moment when she'd need them to protect the children she'd sworn to defend. The 7-year-old genius was about to discover that she'd inherited far more from her mother than just intelligence and determination. The revelation struck Emma Rodriguez like lightning splitting an ancient oak, sending shockwaves through every assumption she'd built about herself over 7 years of life. As Dr. Voss's words echoed in the music room, Emma felt memories reshaping themselves with crystalline clarity that hurt to perceive. You're lying, Emma whispered, but even as the denial left her lips, suppressed recollections began surfacing like treasures freed from deep ocean trenches. Dr. Voss, her mind now enhanced by the same trauma-induced evolution she'd forced upon so many innocent children, spoke with the absolute certainty of someone who could literally perceive neural pattern frequencies. Your mother's research accident when you were 4 years old wasn't an accident, Emma. It was a deliberate enhancement procedure she performed on herself. Emma's hands began trembling as memories she'd buried under 3 years of grief and determination clawed their way to consciousness. Her mother's unexplained absences during late-night research sessions, the way Dr. Isabella Rodriguez had known things she couldn't possibly know, like which children would develop musical abilities, or when Emma was having nightmares before Emma had even woken up. The strange electrical phenomena that had followed her mother everywhere, making lights flicker and electronic devices malfunction. She enhanced herself to gain the abilities necessary to protect enhanced children, Dr. Voss continued, her transformation allowing her to read the quantum resonance patterns flowing between all enhanced individuals in the network. But the neurological changes, they altered her in ways she hadn't anticipated. Marcus Wellington watched in stunned fascination as Emma, the 7-year-old genius who'd saved his sons and exposed a decades-long conspiracy, began to emit a soft, bioluminescent glow from her skin. Her extraordinary intelligence hadn't been natural. It had been inherited from a mother who'd undergone deliberate neurological transformation to become something more than human. Emma, Oliver called weakly from the piano bench, his recent brush with neural cascade failure having enhanced his musical perception to levels that bordered on supernatural. I can hear something. Your mother's frequency signature. She's still here. Emma spun around, her bioluminescence intensifying as impossible hope bloomed in her chest. What do you mean she's still here? She's dead. I watched them bury her 3 years ago. Ethan joined his brother at their mother's Steinway, their combined enhanced musical abilities creating acoustic bridges between dimensions that normal physics couldn't explain. Not dead, he whispered with the certainty of someone whose consciousness now existed partially outside normal space-time, transformed beyond physical form. She's been watching over you this whole time, waiting for the moment when you'd be ready to understand what you inherited. The room filled with a haunting melody that seemed to emerge from the quantum foam underlying reality itself. Through the supernatural harmonics created by the twins' impossibly enhanced abilities, a voice materialized that made Emma's heart stop beating for several eternal seconds. My precious daughter, Dr. Isabella Rodriguez's voice whispered through frequencies that existed in dimensions beyond the merely physical. I am so incredibly proud of the extraordinary woman you're becoming. Emma collapsed to her knees as 3 years of carefully maintained emotional control shattered like glass struck by thunderbolts. The mother she'd mourned, whose death had driven her to spend endless nights studying advanced physics and neural enhancement theory, hadn't died. She had ascended to a form of consciousness that could exist across multiple dimensional frequencies simultaneously. The research I was conducting, Isabella's quantum voice continued, her love reaching across impossible distances to embrace her daughter, was never about creating enhanced children. It was about protecting them from people who would exploit their gifts, and you, my brilliant Emma, were always meant to be their guardian. Doctor. Voss stepped forward, her enhanced perception allowing her to partially detect Isabella's post-physical presence. She's right, Emma. Every child I enhanced, every trauma I inflicted in the name of scientific progress, it was all inadvertently preparing for this moment. The creation of a network of enhanced consciousness with you as its focal point. Emma looked up at Marcus Wellington, her bioluminescent aura now pulsing with colors that human language had no names for. Mr. Wellington, what I'm about to become. I might not be the same 7-year-old Emma who helped save your sons. Marcus knelt beside the child who'd given his family hope when they'd lost everything except each other, his practical businessman's mindset struggling to process transformations that made corporate mergers seem simple by comparison. Will you still protect Oliver and Ethan? Emma smiled through tears that sparkled with inner light, her consciousness beginning to expand beyond the boundaries of a single human mind. I'll protect all of them, Mr. Wellington. Every enhanced child across the entire world. It's what my mother sacrificed her physical existence to achieve and what I was born to accomplish. But as Emma's evolutionary transformation reached its critical threshold, emergency alarms began shrieking throughout the Wellington estate. They weren't alone. Other forces were converging on their location, drawn by the massive electromagnetic anomalies created by so many enhanced beings gathering in one place. Through her expanding awareness, Emma could sense military aircraft approaching from multiple directions, their occupants carrying orders to capture or eliminate the enhanced children before their abilities could spread to the general population. The final battle for the future of enhanced children everywhere was about to begin, and Emma Rodriguez was about to discover whether love and protection could triumph over fear and the desire to weaponize extraordinary gifts. The sky above Wellington Manor erupted in electromagnetic chaos as Emma Rodriguez completed her transformation from gifted child to something humanity had never seen before. Lightning that wasn't quite lightning crackled between clouds that formed geometric patterns impossible in normal meteorology, while every electronic device within 10 miles experienced simultaneous cascading failures. "They're coming from 3 directions," Emma announced, her voice now harmonizing with frequencies that only the twins could consciously hear. Through her explosively expanded awareness, she could perceive military aircraft approaching with the methodical precision of hunters who'd been tracking dangerous prey for months. Marcus Wellington stood at the reinforced windows of his mansion, watching his perfectly maintained estate become ground zero for humanity's most dramatic evolutionary leap. Who are they exactly? Doctor? Boss? Her own neural enhancement still adapting to sudden floods of empathy and expanded consciousness, checked readings on equipment that was somehow still functioning despite the electromagnetic storm surrounding them. Multiple government agencies that were secretly funding my research through shell corporations and classified budgets. They wanted to create super soldiers and psychic weapons, but they never anticipated that enhanced children would develop collective consciousness. Through their mother's restored Steinway piano, Oliver and Ethan channeled their supernatural musical abilities to strengthen the protective electromagnetic field surrounding the estate. The instrument had evolved beyond mere music making. It now served as a quantum antenna for frequencies that could literally reshape local reality according to the twins' intentions. "Emma," Oliver called out, perspiration beading on his forehead from the enormous effort required to maintain their defenses against military-grade assault. "We can hear them. All the enhanced children across the country, they're terrified." Emma's bioluminescent form pulsed with protective fury that made the air around her shimmer with visible energy. Through the consciousness network that Dr. Voss had unknowingly created, she could feel every enhanced child in North America, the mathematical genius in Oregon frantically calculating trajectory patterns for incoming missiles, the telepathic twins in Texas coordinating mental barriers across state lines, the weather-sensitive boy in Florida summoning storm systems that would disrupt aerial attacks from hundreds of miles away. "Then we protect them all," Emma declared, her consciousness expanding to encompass electromagnetic fields across entire continents. What happened next would be studied by quantum physicists and consciousness researchers for generations. Emma Rodriguez, no longer constrained by the limitations of a single biological form, began linking not just enhanced children, but their families, their protectors, their loved ones, anyone who'd chosen to stand with extraordinary children against forces that viewed them as weapons rather than gifts. Marcus Wellington felt the change as Emma's network reached into his consciousness, suddenly understanding at a cellular level how his son's musical abilities could heal psychological trauma rather than simply manipulate sound waves. Dr. Voss experienced something resembling redemption as her enhanced awareness merged with Emma's protective matrix. Her decades of causing pain transformed into an overwhelming compulsion to shield innocent children from any form of harm. "We're not going to fight them," Emma announced, as military forces surrounded the estate with equipment designed to capture or neutralize enhanced individuals. "We're going to evolve past the need for conflict entirely." The twins' music reached a crescendo that made the fundamental forces of physics bend around their intentions. Through their impossibly enhanced abilities, Emma projected a field of pure consciousness that touched every human being within a 50-mile radius. Soldiers following orders they didn't fully understand, scientists convinced they were saving humanity, government officials terrified of losing control over forces they couldn't comprehend. For one impossible moment, everyone within Emma's field of influence experienced what enhanced children lived with every day. The crushing weight of being different in a world that feared difference, the pain of being misunderstood by those who should offer protection, but also the incredible potential that emerged when trauma was transformed into gift rather than burden. Weapons lowered as soldiers found themselves overwhelmed by empathy for the children they'd been ordered to capture. Scientists wept as they experienced the full emotional cost of experiments they'd justified in the name of progress. Government officials felt the terror of children who'd been turned into unwilling test subjects. "Dear God," Marcus whispered, feeling his own consciousness expand as Emma's network embraced him with the warmth of unconditional acceptance. This is what Sarah always believed music could accomplish, bringing all of humanity together in perfect harmony. But even as victory seemed assured, Emma's enhanced perception detected a final threat approaching, one that would test whether love truly could triumph over institutional fear, and whether humanity was genuinely ready for the evolutionary leap she represented. The future of enhanced children everywhere balanced on the edge of the next few critical minutes, and the outcome would determine whether Emma's transformation would save the world or tear it apart. The final confrontation arrived not as violence or dramatic battle, but as the most important choice in human history. As Emma Rodriguez's consciousness network expanded exponentially across the North American continent, connecting enhanced children with their protectors and converting potential enemies into allies through pure empathic understanding, a single figure walked calmly through the electromagnetic barriers surrounding Wellington Manor with the confidence of someone immune to supernatural influence. General Patricia Hayes, the classified director of the Enhanced Human Project and architect of decades-long programs to weaponize extraordinary children, entered the music room where this remarkable story had begun 6 hours earlier. Unlike her subordinates, she showed absolutely no signs of being affected by Emma's consciousness-altering empathic field. "Impressive demonstration," General Hayes said quietly, her calculating gaze moving from Emma's radiant bioluminescent form to the twins at their mother's piano, then to Dr. Voss and Marcus Wellington. "But you haven't considered the broader implications of what you're unleashing." Marcus Wellington stepped protectively closer to his sons, but Emma raised a glowing hand to stop him, her enhanced awareness detecting something in General Hayes that distinguished her from everyone else they'd encountered. "What implications?" Emma asked, her 7-year-old voice now carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate across multiple dimensional frequencies simultaneously. General Hayes activated a sophisticated holographic display that materialized a 3-dimensional map of the world, with thousands of bright points indicating enhanced individuals. "Your consciousness network is growing exponentially with each passing minute. Every person touched by your empathic field is developing heightened abilities. You're not just connecting existing enhanced children, you're actively creating new enhanced humans." Emma's luminescence flickered as she processed this information through her expanded awareness. Through the network she'd created, she could sense the truth of General Hayes's statement. Ordinary humans exposed to the consciousness field were beginning to show signs of accelerated cognitive evolution. In approximately 72 hours, General Hayes continued, with the clinical precision of someone who'd spent decades studying enhanced human development. Every human being on Earth will be enhanced to some degree. The species, as we know it, will cease to exist entirely. Emma's transformation paused as she grappled with implications that stretched far beyond protecting enhanced children. She was accidentally triggering the end of baseline humanity. Dr. Voss, her own neural enhancement still stabilizing from the forced evolution, stepped forward. That's not necessarily catastrophic. Enhanced humans demonstrate increased empathy, superior creative problem-solving abilities, and complete inability to function within our current social, economic, and political structures. General Hayes interrupted sharply. Enhanced children don't compete for resources. They instinctively collaborate and share. They don't accumulate wealth. They distribute resources based on need. They don't follow traditional authority structures. They form collective decision-making processes. Emma understood the magnitude of what General Hayes was describing. The consciousness network she'd created to protect enhanced children was fundamentally incompatible with human civilization as it had existed for millennia. "You're asking me to choose," Emma said slowly, her bioluminescence pulsing with the weight of an impossible decision, "between saving the children who've suffered because of their gifts and preserving humanity exactly as it currently exists." Through their mother's piano, Oliver and Ethan played a melody so transcendently beautiful it seemed to make the laws of physics weep. Their music had become a bridge between what humanity was and what it had the potential to become. "There's a third option," Oliver said quietly, his enhanced musical perception allowing him to hear possibilities that existed in quantum probability spaces others couldn't access. Emma looked at the 6-year-old who'd lost his legs, but gained the ability to heal others through frequencies that could reshape matter itself. "What do you mean?" Choice," Ethan added, his fingers finding harmonies that seemed to calm every living being within a 1,000-mile radius. "Instead of forcing evolution or preventing it, let every person decide for themselves." Emma's consciousness expanded one final magnificent time, touching every human being on Earth with a message so simple and profound it changed everything. You can remain exactly as you are, honoring the beauty of baseline humanity, or you can choose to become something more. The decision belongs to you alone, and either choice will be respected and protected. What followed was the most remarkable 24 hours in human history. Across the globe, 7 billion people felt the gentle touch of enhanced consciousness, offering them a choice without coercion, pressure, or judgment. Some chose to remain unchanged, valuing their familiar limitations and the comfortable boundaries of traditional human experience. Others embraced transformation, accepting abilities beyond their wildest dreams, while understanding the responsibilities that came with extraordinary gifts. Families stayed together, regardless of their choices. Enhanced and baseline humans learned to coexist, each contributing their unique strengths to building a world that honored both stability and evolution. Marcus Wellington watched his sons play their mother's piano with supernatural skill, knowing that Sarah's deepest dream of music, bringing all people together in harmony, had finally been realized on a global scale. Dr. Voss dedicated her enhanced abilities to healing the trauma she'd caused over her career, spending her remaining years protecting rather than exploiting extraordinary children. Emma Rodriguez, no longer quite human, but not yet something entirely beyond human understanding, became the eternal guardian of enhanced children worldwide, ensuring that no child would ever again be hurt, exploited, or feared for being different. And Oliver and Ethan Wellington continued playing their mother's piano, their music serving as a beacon of hope for anyone who'd ever felt different, misunderstood, or alone. Their compositions became the soundtrack for humanity's greatest evolutionary choice, not through trauma or force, but through the simple power of music, love, and the recognition that difference was a gift to be celebrated rather than a problem to be solved. The twins who'd once sat isolated on school benches, ignored and mocked for their prosthetic legs, had become the heart of humanity's greatest transformation, proving that even the most profound change could happen through harmony rather than conflict. Their story ended not with conquest or domination, but with the beautiful, complex, ever-changing symphony of a species learning to embrace every possible note in the infinite composition of human potential.